one.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Exotic Car Hacks, and today we are looking at, is the 720S the most hackable McLaren out there? Now, we know for a fact that the 720S is now on its 5th or 6th year and is almost out of production. Well, I should say it's completely out of production because it's been replaced by the 750S. Now, we know that when a McLaren goes out of its range of production, it becomes hackable. But is this the best McLaren money can buy? Here's what we're gonna find out today on Exotic Car Hacks. All right, guys, so we are back with the 720S specifically, and this example of a Spider is available here at Exotics Hunter, and they've lent us the car so that we can take a look at it and, of course, do a review for you guys. Not of the car itself, because I never review what I don't personally own, and I've done the 720S previously on my channel when it first came out, and it was pretty cool. And just a quick shout out right there. You see my Senna right there, just sold. You see the carbon one in the back, just sold. You may have seen it on the channel previously. Exotics Hunter facilitated that sale for us, so very cool of them. But right here, we're talking again back to the 720S. This is a 2020 Spider. So this is what I would argue to be one of the better end results of what the 720S ended up as. A lot of good options, performance model, top, obviously a hardtop convertible, comes down, goes fast, beautiful. This car is equipped with a tune, exhaust, and these types of things. But today we're not talking about the review of how great the car is, but rather the hackability. Before we do that though, one of the things I wanted to show you here is about some of the things that make the 720S really cool and not so cool, because we haven't really had a Spider on the channel, because previously when I owned the Spider it was very short-lived and I wasn't a big fan. The first thing, because you may have noticed I have a 765 LT Spider which shares a lot of components with this. The one thing that I was very critical of with the Spider on the 765 and 720, which you'll see here, is that you lose the LaFerrari hinge doors in the middle. So instead of the doors opening from here, they open regularly because obviously the hardtop convertible roof comes on. While the driving obviously is superb with the top down, it just loses that edge that made the 720S so much more special. Unfortunate, but just the reality of how technology must work, or what I should say, engineering should work. Now, they've made a lot of upgrades in the 750S, the new variation with the center console, etc. So the 720S still remains somewhat of the older center console and older tech, but it's really not that finicky anymore. You know, it was a problem in 650S, it became a little bit better in the 570, and then the 600 LT was much better. The 720 has never really had an infotainment issue, and it still retains all the same things as the coupe in terms of function. Now, the one thing that I get asked a lot always about tall people, because I'm a short midget, and I'm telling you, being short is just much better, and for a variety of reasons, but we'll get into that maybe some other time, you know? If we're laying here, you know, again, I'm 5'7". You can see I'm always perfect in all these sports cars. Like literally they're made for tiny European men. So it works, and it just works really well. Now, if you're over 6 feet, again, I will always say that the 720 with a Spider model, just like all the other variation, is going to be a little bit more cramped than the coupe version, obviously. And the one thing, remember, the reason why is because you have this sidewall instead of storage here. Which you get with the hatch, so you can lean your seat back more. So because your seat has to be more upright, you ultimately get a very different like variety where your head comes up. But I have friends that are 6 feet tall that have driven this, and while they're not perfect in it, they're definitely a lot more comfortable than a Huracan Spider. So I would consider this car more if you were considering specifically a Spider, and we're on the taller side. The other thing that I wanted to mention, storage again is very limited, but what we're seeing today in most supercars and exotic cars, that storage is just going to be limited and everything. I don't know why they feel that adding a significant glove box or something is going to change drastically the dynamic of the car, but somehow they do. So for now, we don't get as much storage as we would other cars, but we get something that we don't get in a lot of other very cool exotic cars that are convertible. We get a lot of comfort with the 720S. So as you get older, it is much more comfortable to drive long term than a Huracan or something else. And for that reason, I like it a lot. And then getting in and out is a lot easier than a lot of other exotics that are similar with the doors up. So like the Aventador is a disaster to get in and out of. And then this car is obviously very easy because this part is really used as a grip, and often it even has carbon here, so you can use it to literally level yourself up. So generally a beautiful car. Now again, this is not a review. We're gonna go on the board now and see how hackable it is by the numbers. All right, everyone, so you've gotten a glimpse of Hunter's 720S Spider, and I know it looks exciting. In today's world, where Vantages are now $400,000 for V12s, Turbo S's are now over $300K in MSRP. You know, the 720S in the 200s sounds like a pretty good bargain as a supercar to afford. So today we're going to look at the 720S buyer's guide. And before we do, we have to understand a little bit more about the types of models that are out there and what we're going to focus on. So the 720S came out between 2018 and then a 2019 model for the coupe, the base early coupes. Then you had the 2020 coupe and 2021 Spiders. That dragged on into 22. And in 21, I'm sorry, in 22 actually, was it 22 or 21? I think it's 21 or 22. There's also, I'm going to say 21, but there's also an LM model that is very limited for the coupe. Now after that in 22, you started getting the 765 LT, which we're not going to focus on today because it's not really part of the buyer's guide. And then later you get the 750S and so on and so forth. But the main focus point here for this buyer's guide is going to be primarily focused here between 2018 and 2020, which are the most hackable years. So that's where our focus point will be for today's lesson. So one of the things with the 720S as it pertains to those years is many people are still worried about the fact that McLarens are not reliable. So I'm going to say a couple of things about McLaren 720S because I've had about 6 of them to date. It can be probably the best experience of your life. It can also be the worst experience of your life with any McLaren. The more you drive a McLaren, the less it's going to break. The more you try to tweak a McLaren, the more it's going to break. And more importantly, the more you keep a McLaren in a garage without ever driving it, sitting on a tender, the more likely it's going to break next time you turn it on. So you have to think of a McLaren like a racehorse. You can't keep a racehorse in a barn, feed it McDonald's, never let it practice, then take it out all of a sudden and be like, okay, I want you to win a race. The horse is just going to basically fall off and die and need like 5 weeks of intensive rehab to basically be able to go back and, you know, run a race. So the argument here is McLaren is the same thing. It's a performance car that is meant to be driven, and they're very specific about their engineering. So once you start tuning it to getting exhaust and things like that, it could be a good or bad experience. But for the majority of time that I've seen it, especially when you push the boundaries with injectors, new turbos and everything, the car ends up at the shop a lot. So I just wouldn't recommend it that much unless you're very well versed in McLaren and have a lot of support in aftermarket shops and places that can fix the car should you have an issue. Now, in 2018 and 2019, the car came in 2 basic trim levels that are pretty popular. The luxury trim and then the performance trim. Think of the performance trim as no different than something like an R8 V10 Plus versus an R8 V10 here, right? Like a big difference in the sense that you get a few better options, you get more carbon fiber and like standard, and of course, again, you get a performance-driven model rather than a luxury one. So originally, you know, when a lot of the luxury models were coming out, they were coming out in very dull colors with less carbon, etc. But now that the entire line has been released and they're not making the 720S anymore, there's a lot of variations of luxury models out that could also work as a hack. So I don't want you to think it's either performance or nothing, but it is often more recommended to look for the performance model for one key reason. There's a lot less units on the market that are performance models, and so it's just easier to resell because you have something a little bit more special, even though there's nothing really special about the 720S as an exotic car. It's not like a rare or hard to get or anything, but at least the performance model narrows the market a little bit. No different than if we're looking at an R8 V10 performance, there's less of those than there are regular R8 V10s. So the argument here that I'm trying to make again is something that is a little bit more rare, that is a little bit more desirable, is going to do better. Hint, why we're going to focus on the performance model. So if you're looking for the ideal hack, you're basically going to be looking for a 2019 performance model 720S. And the reason you're going to do that is because the 2018 was the first model year. There are some issues with some of the cars that are out there. The majority of these cars are now out of warranty, out of the 3-year warranty. Some of these 2019s could still be on the warranty. Some of the 2020s are under warranty. The argument here is that 2019, a lot of the bugs that were in the 2018 being the first year model car has been taken out. There are many 2018s that are very clean on the market and aren't an issue. A PPI will determine if that's the case or not in the history of the scan of the ECU. But the 2019 is really the key focus point. So finding a 2019 performance is going to give you that better bargain. And then a premium product would be a 2020 or a 21 Spider performance model is going to be the second key market. So where should values be on these cars? Well, the majority of MSRPs on these cars, just so you know, like when it came to like half-loaded cars, etc., was between 330 to 400K. So this was the MSRP of the car, depending on the options, right? Like average, very minimal options, very heavy load options, colors, etc. You're talking about carbon fiber exterior pack 1, 2, 3, stealth pack. You're talking about glass roof, lift, everything in the 400K mark in a cool color. 330, you're talking about no carbon packs anywhere, no glass roof, maybe a lift, maybe some functional options, but primarily a very dull car in options. So you have a nice 70K range right there, which is pretty impressive because remember, one of the things that I try to teach you guys is that when we're looking at car hacking, it's a science, it's a math science. It's not just like saying, oh, I found a car and it's cheap, because then you're just a used car buyer, and it's not about auctions. It's about understanding these models, that there's about a 70K difference here between both models, right? Between a well-loaded model and then a base average model, right? 70K. And one of the things I teach at Exotic Car Hacks, which I'm going to give you for free here, is that usually we want to rebuy options if we're buying them roughly around 30 cents. So 30 cents of 70K in options would roughly give us about like 24,000, I think, 21,000. So $21,000 is basically the difference we're gonna aim for when we're looking at a very well-loaded car. So for example, if you found a used car that had a 400K sticker, as an example, this car had a 400K sticker, and you found another car with a 330K sticker, assuming the same color, miles, and everything, and the difference between the two cars used is 21,000 or less, you always buy the more expensive car because you're buying the options at 30 cents on the dollar. So this matters a lot. So where have these values come? Well, the majority of people will tell you that this is just how they basically perceive this. The majority of people will tell you again that we are looking roughly at about 100,000 off of MSRP. So for example, you would take here the lowest possible car at 330, you would minus 100K, and this car now with about 10,000 miles should be about 230K for the car itself. That's a hack number, right? Now we're gonna add to that number 21,000 for a well-loaded car, and that gives you about 251K. So the average that it tells us is that the hack range for this car is basically between, for a used 2018, 2019, is going to be between 230 and 255K. So this is the range of used 720S car you want to be buying, between 230 for a luxury model that has minimal options with a 330, 340 sticker, and 255K for a heavy loaded 390 to 410K sticker. Again, giving you that range where you're buying options at a significant discount. One of the most powerful ways here for the 720S to remember if you're going to be going after is there are some options you absolutely must have, and that if you are going to still fall in that hack range, can become and be a hackable car. The first thing that I would tell you you would need beyond anything else is lift, in my opinion. Now, this is something that some people have forfeited before, claiming it's a performance car. This is not a 765 LT, and this is not an intentional lift delete. It's what we call being a peasant when you delete your lift. You don't need to delete your lift. This is a very sought after options by a lot of people looking to buy these cars, especially on the secondary markets. So this is very, very important. Let's just make sure we do that. Another option that's just really, really important as well is sound system. So sound system does make a difference because so many people seek it, regardless that it's a Senna or 720S. It's something you're going to want to go after. These are your functional kind of options. Now, when we're talking about carbon fiber, you have carbon fiber exterior package 1, 2, and 3. These are very specific, you know, like bottom, lower rockers, front bumper, etc., all the way to the top, meaning your headlights, your little scoops on the hood, to your rear deck lid and things like that. So you're going to want, depending on where you fall into the mix, if you're buying a very, very expensive, heavy loaded, full carbon car, meaning lots of carbon fiber, inside out, sound, lift, and everything, you're going to want to buy a 2019 performance around 255. That's going to be the most optimal hack possible. Now, if you come back again and you're forfeiting a lot of this stuff and you're buying a luxury model, you're going to want to be in the 230s. Now, people will argue, well, wholesale values could be as low as 200. People would also argue that, hey, I've seen a car cheaper. The world of hacking has nothing to do with the world of wholesaling. We're not talking about buying the cheapest car on the road and reselling it immediately. We're talking about having an incredible experience of driving a car for the next 1 year. Remember, the difference between a dealership and a hacker is that the dealership focuses heavily on the flip and does not intend to drive the car, and therefore if things break down or things matter in 1,000 miles from now, they'll never know. However, on the side of a hacker, you're obviously hacking a car so you can enjoy it. The point is, we're car people, want to enjoy the car. We're not here to like just buy a car, flip it, and try to make money. Otherwise, you become a dealer and you do that. The argument here with this particular aspect here is that you want a car that is going to be safe, meaning like that does not need tires, brakes, or anything else. You want a car that does not have any immediate leaks or any issues that are gonna, a shock could cost you as high as $6,000. So you want to be careful with, you know, if you have 2 shocks that are blown, that's $12,000. Let's say you bought a car for $210K. Now you go, PJ, I killed it. I got the cheapest McLaren 720S. I'm excited. Okay, but then here's the thing: that car, because of its mileage and everything, was worth $210K. But then you had to spend $12,000 for 2 shocks. You had to spend $5,000 on a leak. Now you're already at $218, right? Like you have $18,000. So now you're at $228K for a car that is not as good as the one you could have bought for $230, and you just lost $18,000. So you have to be very careful with buying wholesale garbage and falling victim to this idea that cheap is good. Cheap is never good in the exotic car world. So these are functional options you need. The rest of it is mainly aesthetic. The one thing I will tell you is Performance 2019 carbon hood, carbon options, 400K sticker for $255 will resell 10 times better than a luxury car at $230 with very minimal options and functional upgrades. So just keep that in mind. If you are going to be buying a car, I do recommend you send it to a private purchase inspection. You double check that the DME was never flashed. You double check that the car has no flags under warranty. You can call your local McLaren dealer and be like, has this car been flagged or does it have any issues? The reason you do that is you want to make sure it doesn't have a pending issue, because a lot of people tune these cars, go fuck them up, and then they remove these tunes, they take them to dealerships, they try to get them repaired, dealer flags them, they have a huge issue, they patch it, they trade it in. Well, the next guy buys it and he's got a $30,000 problem. So I can't tell you how important it is to remember that, again, clean matters and going to a private inspection matters. So again, if you want to see more content like this, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I'm talking about hacking cars, keep in mind that in the description, there's a link for you to learn how car hacking is the best and most effective financial way to own a car today. We invented this system back in 2005. It's helped now over 20,000 people do this. And then don't forget, our Black Friday sale in July is live now. So if you click the second link, you're going to get access to over 80% off for actually joining our community, where those same 20,000 people are not only networking with each other and of course getting better at this trade by the minute. So again, I've owned over 300 plus exotic cars, so you don't have to, ultimately putting you in a position where you're buying the best possible cars in the best possible ways and losing the least possible money. I'll catch you guys next time for another video with Exotic Car Hacks. My name is Pejman Ghadimi, and I teach people how to drive exotics for free. Let's look here at how this Huracan can cost as little as $300 a month.